Hi, I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Sophie, and we are here to help guide you to the why behind your wellness why.
Come join us on our journey. Sophie, okay, I have a question for you since we're going to talk about seasons today. What is your favorite season and why?
So I would like to say summer, but I think it's fall. I love the colors of the trees. I like cozying up a little bit. And sometimes it feels like things can just like slow down a little bit before the holiday season. What's yours and why?
So mine used to be when I lived in the Midwest. Mine used to always be summer, like ever since I was little, because I'm a July baby. And so I loved summer. My family would always go on like summer vacations, and it would be my birthday. I also hated school growing up, so you don't have to be in school in the summer. So summer was always mine. But now it's definitely fall. It's for like the exact same reasons you said. So that's kind of funny.
So you hated school, but you went to grad school.
Yes. Accurate.
That was my original plan, but I couldn't make it.
Yep. Fun fact about me, always hated school. I shouldn't, I liked college, but not for school reasons, for other reasons that
So
are are not nutrition and wellness related.
I liked school and I like loved learning, hated being graded on it.
Yes. Yes.
Stressful.
It's so stressful. So this is the other thing that just always pissed me off about school. I grew up with a brother who was very smart, and he was always that person that like he tried, don't get me wrong, like he was a good student, put his work in, but he was the person that like could barely study and get an A plus, and I would have to like study for hours and hours and hours on end just to like I did well too, but I really had to try, and he only like semi had to try. And so yeah, the grading part, it was like I could do well in school. I was smart, but I really had to try. And there's just some people out there that just didn't. And I lived with him, my brother.
I'm the same though. Like school, I would have to study so much. And it's funny because it also relates to the gym and athletes. There are just some people that are naturally athletic and just good at things. And
Yeah.
I am not. I had to try. Why do you think I ran? I couldn't do anything else. And I had to try at running. It's not like I could just go out the door and like be a speed demon. I had to try.
The truth comes out. I'm just kidding. Well,
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of goes along with what we're going to talk about today, because I think that like when we're talking about goals and wellness, and we've talked about this in previous podcasts, but we are so self-comparing, like, oh, that person is doing this because of this. And so I feel like that kind of goes into what we are planning on talking about today a little bit. Do you want to explain what our topic is of the day?
Yes. So we are going to talk about seasonal goals. And I have had this saying for a while. I always say there's seasons for a reason. And I started saying this back when I was a runner, kind of well post college, because in college I had no choice but to run through the winter and in high school. But post college, it was just like running is such a repetitive movement, and taking breaks with just such repetitive movements is important. And that doesn't mean you have to completely stop. But in the winter, I would not always want to run outside. Chicago can get icy. So I would run a little bit more inside at DePaul's track down my block. And I would do more like track workouts and just like less volume and run less versus torturing myself outside. And I would just focus more on strength training. It's important. And I think one should um kind of change their workouts a little bit and their diets a little bit throughout the year.
Yeah, and I think this is such a good time to talk about this because we're coming up on a very big month, not necessarily for a good reason, but a very big month in the wellness side of things, aka January, aka New Year's resolutions. And so many people like set these big, huge goals for the year. And I don't want to downplay those goals. I think, you know, we've kind of talked about New Year's resolutions before, and we're not going to like get too much into that today, but it's taking that step back and looking at, as we always say, like why, but then like, do you have a game plan for it? And I think the more important thing that we're going to touch on today is how does that change through the year? So to your point with like running, if you have a New Year's resolution around running, is that going to change with the seasons? Or did you just set this goal to run, whatever that might be? But like you didn't even really think about the fact that there might be ice and snow on the ground and, you know, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah, 100%. I love it. I also think, again, looking at, the macro, the big picture, like you said, and then micros, and like think about almost quarterly goals and just like putting a notch in your belt each quarter, reviewing yourself and what you want to possibly change going forward. I just think it's more realistic and will set someone up for success. And like your goal is allowed to change, like your why is allowed to change.
Oh, 100%. I always use 2020 as a good example because obviously that year didn't go as planned. Life doesn't always go as planned. And I talk with my clients about that all the time because, especially with nutrition, like we might set these goals around food, but like then something might happen where, okay, they can't meal plan, they can't meal prep, they can't eat the way that they wanted to. Say they get put on a business trip and you have to travel, and now you have to rely on eating out and traveling and all of that type of stuff. So, thinking about your lifestyle and setting goals, but also think about the unexpected things just also might happen. And I think how we manage those unexpected things is just as important as the goals that we set too.
I love that. I totally agree. And Chelsea, I want to ask you because I do know like certain foods go in and out of season. So how, like with yourself, do you think and feel that like your diet changes with the seasons?
Yeah. So, as we all know, I'm all about being realistic when it comes to nutrition. And then so I think that's the first thing that I think about is without even getting into, which I'll get into in a second, more of like seasonal foods and all of that type of stuff. But I also think about like what is realistic based on my lifestyle in a certain season. So, especially around like business, it's like, okay, I have busier months than others. So that might change how I'm eating within that season based on like my busyness with my work schedule, or again, like when I'm traveling or taking time off and all that type of stuff. So I think without even getting into like seasonal foods, the first thing I always like to think about is seasons in terms of like how does my life change within that season and what is realistic to do with then my nutrition goals and my food goals around that period of time. And it's actually interesting you asked that because I just this morning had a conversation with a client about how we're getting into like the winter months and how it's so much more challenging to get in different types of fruits and vegetables specifically, not because they're not available, because we do live in a world now that even if things are quote unquote out of season, they're probably shipped from somewhere else, and you can probably find not everything, but like most things at a store year round. But even like thinking about the quality of it and like, does it taste good? Like for me, and I guess this probably depends on where you live, but like tomatoes, they just don't taste the same in the winter. I can find them in the winter, but I'm probably not doing the same thing with tomatoes in the summer than I am in the winter. In the summer, I am probably eating them fresh, putting them on a salad, doing something with like a caprese type of thing. And in the winter, it's more of like, okay, I'll still use tomatoes, but they might be more in like soups and stews and all of that type of stuff too. So kind of thinking through like, what do you like more? Like in the winter, I like warm, comforting, hot food versus in the summer, I like fresh, crisp, cold food. So I think that's kind of number one. And then number two is foods do definitely change seasonally. I think we all know that. Like food, especially your produce, goes in and out of season, and the quality of nutrition goes along with that too. So I don't want to get too nitty gritty because again, I always want to go back to like, what do you like? What do you enjoy? What's realistic in the period of life that you're in? But the quality of those certain things do change. So if you're eating a food for a specific reason because you're wanting to get certain nutrients from that food, you're absolutely still getting nutrients from that food, but it might just not be the same amount or the same quality as another time of year, or again, depending on like where it was grown, how it was grown, where it was shipped from, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah. And I just have to say, thinking of the environment, I remember this from my environmental science class in high school. Ideally, you would only eat foods in season, but like Chelsea said, they're available all the time. I'm just saying, if you're a little bit of an environmentalist, kind of keep that in mind grocery shopping.
I do think going into the winter, it is harder because there's just not as much in season. There's definitely still stuff in season, right? Like now's like a great time of year. Well, we're kind of getting more into like the winter, but like fall for squash. Like, so there's definitely things in season every
Yeah.
single time of the year. But I do have
Yeah.
to say, in the summer, that time there's just more variety. So I think a good way of thinking about it is maybe prioritizing those seasonal foods, making sure you're getting those into your diet. And then if there's other foods there that are not in season that you still enjoy, like absolutely. But we always want to like add versus take away. So a good example, and Sophie and I actually talked about this recently. Like I love berries, any type of berry, strawberry, blueberry, raspberry, blackberry. I love berries. But let's say like strawberries, for example, they're most in season in more of those like summer months. But I eat them year round just because I do genuinely enjoy them. And I never want to tell myself, oh, I can't eat a strawberry because it's not in season. But I also know in the winter months, okay, I might not be getting the exact same nutrition. I'm definitely paying more money for them. Things that are out of season are usually more expensive. So that's something else if you're trying to like budget and that type of thing, taking that into consideration. But I also try to, even though like I genuinely like strawberries and I try to eat them throughout the year, it's like, that's fine. But am I also getting in some of that other seasonal produce that I might not be getting in? So, yes, I might have strawberries, but I might also be prioritizing like the squash, the Brussels sprouts, those types of things that are in season around this time of year to just kind of balance it out. I don't know if any of that made sense. I just rambled on.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it makes sense that obviously certain times of the year more food is more nutrient dense, it being in season, and sometimes it's not out of season but still wanting to eat it.
Yeah. But I do have to say, frozen, especially when we're talking about our produce. So frozen produce gets picked at their prime state. And so that's a really great way. And I know you can't use frozen foods. Like again, like I know frozen strawberries don't taste the same as fresh strawberries, but like that is a really good trick and way of like if you are wanting to get foods that aren't in season, or you can't find things that aren't in season, but you still might want to get the quality of them or want to be including them in your diet, maybe not pay as much as like the fresh imported stuff that you buy. Going frozen can be really, really helpful.
That's usually what I do with all of my berries in my smoothies in the winter. I just go frozen.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. You're going to save money and the quality of it's usually good too.
I have to say, this is a local issue if you are in Chicago, Illinois, that Whole Foods meat counter is so much better in the winter than it is in the summer. I just prefer the options. Like in the summer, it's all skewers and whatever those are called, for like grilling. But I just prefer like give me a chicken cutlet that's in Parmesan and herbs, please. And they won't have that in the summer. So run to Whole Foods now.
That's so interesting. I've never thought of it, which kind of goes back to again, like, what do you like? What do you enjoy? What that type of thing. Yeah. And I think that's a good example of things being out of our control in different seasons. If we go into more of like exercising, like running, I'm going to go back to running because that's an easy example where if there's like ice on the ground and you like running outside, you're probably not going to do that. Maybe you won't. I don't know.
Oh my God, no,
I won't be running with ice outside.
I ate it in college. I was a sophomore or junior in the middle of DePauw's Nature Park doing an out and back run, and I turned around. I was with my girlfriend Stephanie and ate it on the turnaround. I like whoop, feet went out from under me.
Did you get hurt?
I mean, I landed on my hands. I was fine, but I was ever since then, I've been paranoid of running in any sort of ice.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, yeah.
but with what you're saying, we had a rule in high school that if it was under 12 degrees Fahrenheit, we weren't allowed to go on a run and we had to do stairs instead. In college, I don't think we had that rule, to be honest. I don't totally remember. And I know I broke it a few times in college. And for some reason, it was always after those runs that were like 5, 7 degrees that I would get sick.
I mean, shocking.
But,
I don't know why that would be, Sophie.
right. Um, And I do have to say, I mean, exercise, there is less that can change with the seasons, right? Because I mean, there's always gyms which are indoors in America usually. But think about kind of like Chelsea said in her schedule, my schedule also changes with the year, and I do tend to have busier summers, not only with work but socially. And I'm gonna have to say, I assume everyone else does. So keep that in mind. Like, know that for that summertime quarter or season that you might be working out a little bit less, but with that, like, give yourself grace. And if you do want to keep hitting your gym or fitness goals, then just make note, like in that quarter or season, like I'm still going to commit to 3 days in the gym as best I can around my schedule. But like, it's not the end of the world if I don't get there.
Yeah. If you're thinking about the seasons and you know a wellness goal might have to take a little bit of a turn for whatever reason, is there something else that not to say like to replace it or take its place, but like priorities can also change with the season. And I think that's okay too,
Yeah.
like because think about again, kind of going back to like what is out of our control of like so many things with the different seasons, like since this just happened, is like daylight savings time when it gets dark and light out, like that changes yours, which is then going to probably impact your energy levels and your sleep and all of that type of stuff. So it's like I sometimes think as humans we put so much force on like setting these exercise and nutrition goals without thinking about everything else outside of that. And so sometimes going back to those foundations of, okay, maybe in the summer, my goal is to walk outside more because it's lighter outside for longer, but in the winter when it gets dark out, and if you live somewhere that maybe you don't feel safe walking at night, then that goal might change. But then like what then could maybe then what are you doing at night? Maybe that's a really great time to prioritize cooking in the kitchen more and spending a little bit more time cooking or trying something new in the kitchen because you're not spending that hour walking. So sometimes I think we try to do like apples to apples of like, oh, well, I'm not walking, so I need to replace that with something else similar to that. And I think you can do that, but you can also kind of go like outwards and expand that in a different wellness area.
Yeah, I love that. Just going back again to what Chelsea and I both said about like our schedules, like, which I know I've said this before, I really like to look on Sundays at my week ahead. And I'm like, what is realistic for me to be able to do this week with my meals and my exercise? And like, it's okay if I don't get to everything. Like, if I have a really big week with work, like I know like it's okay to go to Whole Foods Hot Bar on my way home so I can get something that is like almost home cooked if that's what I want to do. Or like getting takeout and being okay with that and skipping my workout if I need to. Like I know like 3 weeks ago I was so busy. I think I only worked out twice during the week and like it was fine. Like this week I'm working out every day. Like it's just having to deal with everything changing and you have to do what you can. And it doesn't mean it's never a priority to me when I have a really busy week. It's just they might have shifted that week that I don't want to lose sleep for a workout. You know?
Totally. Yeah. Okay, so we're coming up on January pretty soon. So like how are you going to go about setting goals for the year, the seasons? Like do you try to set quarterly goals? And I don't think there's a right and wrong answer. I think it is dependent, but like what would you say is an example of like what that would look like for you?
Yeah. So 2021, I know, and I don't love New Year's resolutions, and I think we all know that. But 2021, I did set a goal to travel more and manage my work schedule. And my brother gave me the idea. Well, actually, he gave me this idea for 2022 because 2021, I traveled a lot. I still hit my work goal, but I traveled a lot. And then 2022, my brother was like, so try and think of it like a regular corporate business instead of like just lollygagging, working on our own. We're not lollygagging, but you know what I mean? Non-corporate job. And he was like, think about taking 5 days off a quarter. So that's 20 days in the year, because I think in 2021, I took 6 weeks of work off, a lot. And then I think which I should go back and look at this year. I liked his idea of 5 days off a quarter. And I also know that in the summertime, I barely take any off. So then I'm like, okay, well, half of those days can go in the spring and half of those days can go in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I try and hit like a work goal. And I also know like I'm busier in the summer. I try and just go with the flow with that. So I also know I'm going to work out a little bit less in the
Mm-hmm.
summer. So I try and plan for that. I also prefer to walk outside a lot because I don't really run anymore. So I know I'm going to get all my steps in the summer. So then for me personally, in the winter, I try and lift more. I try and get like 5 solid days a week. And I'm just a little more lenient with that in the summer. But I don't have as many lifting goals, to be honest. I feel like right now I'm like, I want to get 10 pull-ups, but I don't really know when that's going to happen. I would love that to happen in January, but I have like mini goals with that. My true big goal is to just be consistent. Like I already, like one of my goals for years was to deadlift twice my body weight, and I did that. That doesn't mean I stopped deadlifting though, which we've spoken about that too. What do you do when you reach a goal?
Yeah.
Um, I would like to deadlift 250, but I don't know when that's going to happen. I did get a little bit injured in May because I was just doing too much. So if there's ever a time where I'm doing too much, I also take a step back and I'm like, okay, I need to not lift more than 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and make sure I am getting my sleep because we know I'm a bad sleeper. But I've actually been really good with my sleep lately. Chelsea, the last 3 weeks, I've been getting in bed between 10 and 10:15, and I wake up at 5 a.m. So like that's great.
Woohoo!
I know.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love that. No, thanks for sharing. I think that's helpful to hear just some ideas.
Yeah, sorry, that was a lot, guys.
No, it's always good. And I think you make a good point. And you had said this, we kind of already talked about this too, but like your personal goals might run into like your professional goals and just thinking about the big picture of everything.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I feel like I have to do it, or I just get too caught up.
Yeah. Something that can be helpful and something important to think about is I also think reflecting on some of that. A lot of times I see with myself and my clients in the past has been like, okay, we're go, 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 trying to reach these goals. But like, are you ever reflecting on what you've accomplished and what you're doing well? And instead of being like, oh, I have so far to go, I haven't reached this and I still have this and this and this is like the reflection piece of it. So yeah.
So it's funny you say that because after we did our 6 week program which is what ended in like 2021,
No, that was in 2020.
and I think we ended it, I think I was in Florida. Didn't we? We did it January. Oh no, wait. It was in 2021.
It was in 2020. Like it was like end of 2020 going into 2021 because I was
Yes.
still in Chicago.
Yes. After that, after I gave my sleep speech, when I focused on my one mess up, it was my goal for 2021 also to focus on the good, to reflect on quote unquote the bad and to focus on the good. Because there's good and bad you can pick out of literally anything. Um, and I started doing a way better job at that. Like, what's an example? I didn't do the goal of 5 days a quarter, right? But I did the goal of traveling a little bit less and still hitting my work goals and taking enough time off for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been working. I think this can again like be looked at big picture. But I've also been looking at this with a lot of clients as like little picture on even like a daily basis. So I think sometimes when we set to-dos or goals or whatever we want to call them to do within a day, like habits that we want to be working on, sometimes we can get down on ourselves if we like don't accomplish something. So I think reflections can be looked at in the big picture of like kind of reflecting on like whether again that be on a quarterly basis, on a monthly basis, just like regrouping, reflecting, refreshing, all of that type of stuff. But it can also be done on like a daily or weekly basis of, okay, well, I didn't accomplish this and that's what I wanted to do today, but I did this, and this. And that can help so much from a mindset standpoint, which mindset is a completely different topic. But if your mindset's not there, the changes and habits are going to be really hard to keep.
Yeah.
What's the word I'm trying to think of? Keep uh, consistent, I guess.
Yeah. And it's just so important. Like, and my clients will tell me, they're like, man, I feel like crap today, but I showed up. And I'm like, yeah, that's the most important part. And that's the positive thing. Even though you don't feel great, like you showed up and you stayed consistent and you did the workout.
Yeah.
Huge positive.
Consistency. Yeah. Consistency is key, right?
Yeah, girl.
So would we say our takeaway is today, our food for thought?
I think part of what we were just talking about of like reevaluating and acknowledging everything, but focusing on the positive. And think about big picture and mini goals. What do you think?
So I agree with all of that. I would also say, in terms of seasons, like what can you add in different seasons? This goes, we've talked about this with food, like what can we add in versus what can we take away? And which I guess kind of goes back to the whole like positive versus negative, but I sometimes think with seasons and goals, specifically wellness goals, we also sometimes focus on like the restriction and what's taken away versus what we can add in. So like winter is a great example of, okay, maybe it's colder, so you're not outside and walking as much, and maybe it is getting darker out earlier, but maybe that's a good reason to add in focus on sleep because you're more tired. I don't know. You get what I'm saying? So like what can we add in wellness wise per season versus like focusing on the negative of what is potentially taken away that's out of our control this season.
I love that. I agree. And something I thought of like fitness related. So you don't want to run outside in the winter because it's dark and cold. Maybe add a little bit of a social aspect and go to a cycling class with a girlfriend instead.
Mm-hmm. Love that. I actually just talked with another client about the importance of socialization, and how there's like so many different pillars of wellness. And so again, kind of going back to like that big goal, as I know in this podcast, we specifically talk about like nutrition and exercise, but there's so many different pillars to wellness, and you don't always have to be accomplishing things in every single one of those pillars at the same time. If you can, great. But I know I can't.
Go,
So
go listen to our other podcast.
which one?
The foundations of wellness. Come on,
Yes.
Chelsea.
Yes. Go listen to, yes, yes, yes. Go listen to our Foundations of Wellness podcast. These go very hand in hand with each other.
So get ready to look at your 2023 ahead and maybe think of, sure, some big picture goals, and then maybe think about even those big picture goals in quarters or seasons and how they may change and what you can add in and how you will be okay with that throughout the year.
yeah. And if you have like a yearly goal, that's great. But I will even say if you're overwhelmed by that and just want to start, like if you just want to think about the now and think about, okay, what do I want to be working on this quarter, or even take it smaller and like this month, that's okay too. So some people do like to look at big picture and then bring it in. And some people are just like, nope, I have no idea what my life is going to look like in a year. And that is totally okay too.
I love it. And I agree. Everybody's different. Your goal doesn't have to match anybody else's.
Well, happy holiday season and thanks for listening in.
Bye, everybody.